Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish, where two industry vets talk about the unrelenting pursuit of creativity and the people, work, and culture that celebrates or suffocates it. I'm one of your hosts, Marc Levy.
Jeremy Baka at your service. And how are you doing, dude?
Not as good as you. I am not. Now I'm kind of pumped. You know what I've always loved about working with you? No doubt, no joke.
My outfits.
You have an infectious energy about you.
Yeah.
Like I am so low energy most of the time, and I see you come in and just bounce off the walls and get pumped and excited. Whether or not you actually feel that yourself is, who knows? But I'll tell you that it's always great because it always lifts my energy up, no matter how shitty I feel. So
Dude, appreciate that. And it can work for you and against you. I'll never forget one of our very famous mutual friends is Lisa Talbot. I don't know if you remember Lisa Talbot, of course, right?
of course.
And I was on a last minute brainstorm call for her for this emergency healthcare idea we needed. And it was for Jenny Craig or some other weight loss program. And she goes, "We need an idea fast. And I know you can come up with it." And I'm like, "Here's what we do. They have these caps. You put these caps on and it can measure your desires or whatever. It's kind of just really cutting edge technology, this and that." And then she's like, "I don't know that." No. And then we'll have them ride these bikes and they go across. And so they're exercising, but they also have and she goes, "Oh my God." By the end, yes. And she hangs up. And my phone rings 5 minutes later. Now, mind you, this is like 11 o'clock at night. And she goes, "Wait a minute. Are we talking about fat people wearing helmets driving around a city on a bike?" I got her so fired up on a dumb idea. She called and said, "We can't do this."
That sounds like Lisa. That sounds like Lisa. Yeah, she just got some new big role, and like she's president of something doing something.
Really?
I forget exactly what it is, but yeah, she left MSL and she has struck out to lead her own thing. So yeah, good for her. And
enthusiastic applause for her. And let's hit her up for some business, man.
that's what I'm saying.
Dude,
come on.
That's the last thing you and I need is another meeting to attend or another, deadline to hit. But be careful what you ask for, brother.
Yeah.
I also must tell you that in terms of the energy thing, just to go back to that, because it popped into my head. My mentor, Doug Buemi, pulled me aside one time. He goes, "Look, I'm not going to change your presentation style. All I'm going to do is alert you to something that you need to be aware of. Sometimes you come across as a used car salesman." And he said, you've got to dial that down. And so I said, "Okay." So I went to this training, this international training, Maestro, right? And Maestro, and at Maestro,
yeah. Again, I know you're getting old. We were there together.
Yes. Oh no, I remember Maestro.
Okay.
Yes.
With Lisa Talbot.
But yeah, yes. But for those
Circle
who don't
Life,
know,
okay.
it's an international training for all of WPP's top marketers. They come in and they're trained on how to do business better. And one of the things I said in this class or this breakout group I was in, that I was struggling with coming across as a used car salesman when I presented. And my group said, "Okay, we're going to help you with that." And there was this French woman in there, and she was very tight-lipped and just very standoffish. I know, shocking being French, but forgive me to the French viewers. So I got up and did this presentation to them, really working on this, and this French woman goes, "Total used car salesman." I said, "Okay, thank you very much." I said, I got more work to do, I can see.
Yeah, and then she surrendered.
Mm.
And I'm saying that I don't care if we lose our entire Parisian audience. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
We are going to continue to risk our careers, so
None,
you don't have to.
that's right. And none of your clients are French. Well, listen, brother, you want to do a pre-intro on our really interesting guest? It's kind of out of the common realm for us. So why don't you talk to people?
Yeah, a really interesting guest. Uh, Howard Pulchin is someone that I actually met at Edelman years and years ago. I interviewed with him for a creative gig. And the first thing he said to me was, "You're with me, right? That Twizzlers doesn't make people more creative, like candy in a brainstorm type of thing." And I'm like, "Okay, we are totally on the same
Yeah,
page."
yeah.
And we never actually worked together, but he's had a really amazing career. He is a creative leader and had that role at Edelman, Diageo. He went in house, APCO, and his kind of view on the creative process uh, has always been really interesting. But here's why I wanted to bring him on today. In 2024, he did something interesting. He ran for selectman for his town in Northwest Connecticut and won. So
Hmm.
he's actually like an elected official in government. He's the head of his town's Democratic committee, and he's chair of the Connecticut uh, Democrats Small Town Caucus. So he's really active, and the idea of injecting not only a fresh voice but creativity into politics
Yeah.
and how that works has always been really amazing. So I would love to, yeah, let's bring him on and let's
Let's
introduce Howard.
let's do that with a quick caveat, to half our listeners that signed up because they're Republican. We don't get into the politics here, and this is honestly not what this is about. If it makes you feel better, submit a Republican guest and we'll have him on. But this is just looking at through the lens at creativity through a different lens, and from somebody who's an accomplished brander and creator, and how he brought that to his new endeavor. So that's what we're focused on. So let's bring him on.
Definitely.
Bueller, there he is.
Hey,
Greetings, my friend.
Howard, how are you, man?
I am good if I can get my computer to work, which I've been living on my laptop for years now. And so, anyhow, I'm doing well. It's good to see you, Mark. And Jeremy, it's
Good to
nice to
see
meet
you too, man.
Nice
you.
to meet you,
Well,
brother.
Now, Jeremy, we talked offline. We're going to get into all we set up with Howard about that intersection and that kind of weird orbit that lives around creativity and politics and how that's working in our culture and lots of different topics. But Jeremy, you and I we talked offline, and I mentioned to you that I had a little surprise for you.
Yes.
And I've brought Howard on to talk about all of those things, but there is one story that I would like Howard to start with because you and I have had this conversation many, many times. We've talked about this campaign many, many times,
Oh
and
boy.
we've talked about this idea of creative credit and how that can kind of go sideways and weird and all
Yeah.
those things. Okay. So, my present to you is Howard actually had a front row seat to the inception, creation, and development of the Dove campaign for real beauty.
Whoa, what? Finally, someone
Yes.
who can we get an affidavit on this too, and some kind of proof, dude? Because everybody that room in the Dove room where that happened apparently had 1 million people in it, near as Mark and I can tell. So it's nice to find somebody that was actually there. No way.
well, let's say it had 1 million people because it went on for so long. I mean, it was
Yeah,
the enduring campaigns
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So there has been a lot, and I'll just say this: I'll tell you the answer that I think is true. But I also grew up in the time when PR people sat at the kids'
Yes,
table And then we
Yes.
got invited to the big table, but we were all the way toward the end of it, right? And so I've lived in this world where, oh, you're just the PR people. You can PR it. So anyhow, so should I tell you my story
Go
here?
for it.
Okay. So we had won the Unilever business, and Dove was a part of this back when I was at Edelman. And it was Dove had an idea. They wanted to become a different kind of beauty company because they were entering into more categories. Once you get out of the bar of soap, again, it's not called the bar, it's the beauty bar, but they were getting into face, they were getting into hair, and they were becoming a full-fledged beauty brand, and they wanted to come up with a different way to be, just not like all the rest. So it was a woman by the name of Sylvia Lignato and a man named Alessandro Manfredi, who were the global brand directors and the assistant global brand directors. They had this idea that
Is
they
that on
had.
the client side or the agency
Oh,
side?
I'm sorry. That was on the client side. They were at
Okay.
Unilever, the
Okay.
global
Okay.
brand director and her assistant brand
Gotcha.
director. They had this idea and they brought agencies in to help bring it to life. So, there are people from the ad agency who did amazing work who
Yes.
basically said, we created that idea.
Oh,
Created great
interesting.
campaigns.
No
People
way.
at Edelman, where I was there at the time, did some major work on
Mhm.
it, but it wasn't the Edelman idea or the media company's idea in the myriad. It was an idea that was born by the global brand director and this assistant global brand director.
Wow.
So that's what it was. But the credit is we did that. Well, you may have worked on a piece of it. And
Wow. Did they come up with it and then do this research to prove it, or did the research inspire it, or do you know? Because it was like only 4% or 2% of women see themselves as beautiful.
Okay, I will tell you the research. So there was research done, but we needed to do more to
I got
substantiate what I found. And that was one where I can say clearly Edelman was in the lead. I was part of that, but Teresa McDonald, who did so many things in the inception, was really spearheading that.
you.
And the stat that came out, which everyone remembers, only 2% of the world's women feel or consider themselves beautiful.
Wow.
And then it became our job is to widen the definition of beauty so that more women can feel beautiful.
Wow. There you go. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. I will have the first good night's sleep in the last 25, 30 years tonight. Thank you for
Jeremy, if I could do that for you, I'd be
that.
happy. And I could leave right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So
You know
thank
what? I'm gonna record you on my phone and then listen to you instead of waves at night. I'll just listen to that over and over.
Oh, I can drone on. You don't want that, I don't think. So no, but I'll just say this: the whole idea about credit. One of the favorite things I did in my career, and I told Mark about this, was I was at Diageo. We were at that point. It wasn't the merger hadn't taken place yet. It was the Guinness, and we gave away pubs in Ireland for 6 years.
Mm,
Literally gave them away.
I
And
remember that campaign. Yeah.
yeah, me too.
and in telling this story, I remember years later, the ad agency said, "No, we came up with that idea." It's like, no, you didn't. And remember when we had decks and we had notes, we printed out things? I had the notes from the brainstorm that we did for one of our other brands, Bass Ale. And we
Mm.
said, what if we were to give away an English pub? It never
Oh no.
worked with Bass at the time, but then we applied it to the Guinness brand. But it was a shared thing, and we all
Yes.
played a role in it. And that's what I think is lost these days,
Yes.
sometimes the credit. And so,
100%. I just see these, it's largely, well, I won't call anybody out, but yeah, everybody fighting and saying this was my or our idea. I'm like, dude, there were so many people involved in that probably. But thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So no, somebody probably wrote, no, you got to capitalize the P in pub
Yeah.
and has since taken credit for that
Yeah.
idea. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sure. I worked on that in the beginning.
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, Howard, thank you again for coming on. I've wanted you to come on for a while because we're always looking to just talk creative with other creative stalwarts in our business. But you've done something that I'm still frankly trying to wrap my head around in a good way. There are a lot of us out there who are, involved in a lot of side hustles
Mhm.
as we kind of figure out second halves of careers and new opportunities. Jeremy, as an example, has a thriving escort service that he's working on in Vegas,
Yeah.
making, decent bank.
Competition's
I'm,
tough.
s- I'm
Competition is stiff.
certainly, we're doing trainings, we're doing, all these things, but you probably have one of the most compelling side hustles, if I can call it that, if you don't mind, that I've heard from someone coming out of our industry. It started, God, almost 2 years ago now, back in 2024. You've actually entered the political arena. How did that come about?
Well, like many of us, and you can call it many different things, I was restructured. I like saying I was restructured. It sounds really fancy, but I was restructured out of my job, which is a legal term sometimes for being laid off. I kind
Yeah.
of could see it coming because I could, every year at bonus time and raise time, I got these great evaluations. Well, we're gonna have to make it up to you in the bonus because you're so well paid. And so, in those days, it's like, hey, I'm paid a lot.
Yeah.
So I kind of anticipated it. And I just started thinking about, preparing for it. And no one likes it, even though if it was quite a liberating thing. It
Yeah.
was, you kind of think about what do you really want to do? And so this happened, and I decided I'm going to do something I had never done before, and that was take off time. I just didn't take off that much time. I mean, yes, I took vacations, but I never took time just to like think about what did I really want to do. So, before this time, I started getting more and more involved in a number of nonprofit organizations. I just felt I had to give back. I was living a New York City lifestyle. I was doing well, traveling, but I needed to do more. I needed to feel connected to community organizations or political organizations. And so I was a serial board joiner. That accelerated when I left the workplace, and I'm doing so many boards right now and so many advisory councils. But when I was moved up here full time to Northwest Connecticut, people were telling me, we are, these small towns, Northwest Connecticut, they're not as blue as one thinks. They're evenly divided sometimes between Dems and Republicans, and unaffiliated voters are the biggest chunk of voters. And they said, we really don't have a Democratic Party in our town. Would you take over this nascent organization? And, at first I was like, I don't know. But then I said, why not? Now, I had no idea what I was doing, what rules I had to follow, and what were the restrictions. I did everything by the book, so to speak, but I had no idea. And we just created something out of nothing up here in a small community. And I like to tell the story that we just started like friends and neighbors.
Yeah.
And we just talked about it's not about against anything. It was more about how do we get more Democrats involved in the governing of our town. And so we set out with three objectives in 2024. One was to turn some of the elections, the state and federal elections, around. And we were successful. First time our congresswoman won our town that was her fourth attempt. It was the first time in probably years or decades that a Democrat won president in our town. That was Kamala Harris. Of course, we know that wasn't great news overall, but for people who think like us or me, that was one. Two, we wanted to build up a community of people to around 50, 60 people in our first year. We nailed that. But the third objective was in municipal elections in 2025, there was not a single Dem on the ballot. We aimed to change that. We basically fronted candidates. We had six candidates we fronted. We didn't do it to win everyone. We didn't do it like that we were going to take over. No, it was about sharing responsibility. I couldn't find someone to run for. We have a role called selectman. It's like a councilman. It's like an alderman. Couldn't find someone to run. And so, given my work with Victory Fund and Victory Institute, I said, okay, I'll do it. So I became a selectman in November of 2025. So I'm now involved in our local government, but I'm also now involved in our state party. and I am the chair of our small town caucus, which is kind of ironic for a person who spent most of his life in big cities. But I am basically working with other small towns and how they come to life. And so what I've realized is I am at the intersection of local and state, and that's where you can really make change. So it is this kind of like, wow, would I have thought of this for myself? Probably not, but it makes so much sense, probably more sense than what I was doing for the last at least 10 years of my work life. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm in politics.
So go ahead, Mark. You have a question, Mark?
No, I was just
Go
gonna.
ahead.
I mean, how is it going? Are you? I guess number one, are you happy? Like, are you enjoying yourself doing what you're doing, aside from any kind of purpose or goal that you have as part of your elected responsibilities?
Happy is probably, I don't think I'd say I'm happy.
I think you just answered it.
No, but I think what I'm doing, I'm satisfied. I am okay. On one hand, I am overwhelmed because I am doing way too many things,
Yeah.
and I'm involved in lots of different things. I feel that I am doing meaningful work. I mean, let's face it, you both have done so many new business pitches in your careers and lives, and there's the thrill of it. At the end of the day, is it always as meaningful? We want to win, we're dejected when we lose, and
Yeah.
when we win sometimes, okay, it's not what we really pitched, but hey, we won the business, right? I feel that working at the community level is extraordinary. It's extraordinary in two ways, at least for me. One is I live among people and to get to know them better and not to get them to know them by labels or what they do for work or what they did for work is really nice. We're sort of like equal without being so-called equal with equal experiences.
Yes.
So that to me is really, really meaningful. And the second one is really where we can work to improve how our community comes together. Yes, there's hardships, there's divisions, we don't always agree, but at the end of the day, what we're striving for is not to be winning the king of whatever time period it is, or we don't enter in politics, we don't enter can awards. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, or PR Week awards,
Yeah.
but we are trying to do things that benefit the town and its citizens. So it's meaningful. It's not easy. I will say that.
I'm sure. And one of the things I'm curious about, because you said a couple things. One, you said we got somebody elected who had ran 4 times prior and didn't win. You obviously are on a finite budget. You talk about funding, fronting people, and I'm just curious how all that's accomplished with no funds and no time, and how you turn somebody around from having lost 4 times and suddenly she wins. What new thinking did you put forward that made that happen?
It's a great question. One, it's persistence. I mean, I wear many hats and I had to become the chief fundraiser of for this effort. But again, we had many of my neighbors and friends who joined in, either by giving money, hosting events to raise money, but I also had the support of many of our officials, our elected officials across Connecticut, because they wanted to see us be successful. And so money hasn't been the big problem. When I was running, I was able to go to my network and ask them for donations. It's not fun always asking for money, but the money came, I won't say it came easy, but we didn't need a ton of money in a small town. This is not, we have no TV, we have no billboards, we do not do ads on the web.
Right.
So money was easy. Um, I think the the member of Congress. I think what we had was energy. Before there was no energy. It was just, hey, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm unaffiliated, I'm going to vote who I want to vote. Or you have a lot of weekenders here who don't necessarily vote up here. So we got people to change their where they voted from New York City to Connecticut. It's always good to have more people involved in the town. But I think what we did was we promoted the candidates. We had basic things like lawn signs we gave out. People displayed them. We showed up. but we also showed up knowing that we had the commitment that we were backing a really good member of Congress. So it's persistence, it's energy, but sometimes it's about showing up and just talking with people.
I could not, if I reached out to my friends, Mark, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to run for office. Can you give me some money?" They would be an hour before they stop laughing. I mean, I don't know how you do that, and I know that's not how you approach it, but just asking for money, technically for yourself or for somebody versus maybe you do position it as a broader thing, but asking for money to me has always been very difficult. Unless it's with the client. I don't have any problems when it's very business based, but this seems very, hey, dude, I know we haven't talked in a while, but could you donate X? I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
Well, it sucks because right now, I am sure in the time that we are recording this, all three of us must have received emails, text messages, and phone calls from people asking us for money.
Yeah,
It's getting out of control.
yeah.
Uh, but if you can point it to a future state where you want to go, now that doesn't always work. But I think the difference between what I am doing now versus what I did back then is you're really talking about if you do it well, and I'm not saying I always do it well, it's about the needs of people versus the needs of a company or a brand.
Mm.
I think if you put why are you doing this and who are you doing it for front and center, I think it becomes easier, which I think is a lesson I've learned, which I wish I could apply back to some of the pieces of business I worked on. Because
Yeah,
How
because
so? Yeah.
it sounds like you're convincing, like you're talking about how you would sell in a strategy, how you would convince a client of a particular direction. And the one thing that was hammered into us, at least, I can speak for myself, at a very early age in this business was you put the consumer at the center of the idea. The target audience is where this should, like, you shouldn't be talking about the brand. You should be talking about how the brand helps elevate the person. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've had to do. And think about it in terms of, like you said, future state. It's about outcomes, not outputs. It's not about like elect this person cause it's about here's how we want this town to look or state to look or country to look in X amount of years. And this is what's going to help get us there.
I'd say yes and okay. And I'm going to challenge you a little bit if I could. Yeah, we always
Please.
put the audience first, put the consumer and but did we really do that? Did we really? And again, it depends probably on who we were working for, the project we were working on, but it was also about, as much our the brands we worked for wanted to be famous. They wanted to get credit for things. They wanted to be seen as the knight in shining armor. And did we really also know what people wanted, how they really live their lives, or did we generalize that
Mm.
all X audience were the same, the classic archetypes? Well, they are a woman, mother of this, that. But again, we tried to oversimplify, and I
Yep.
think we did this at least I know I can say this now. We did this in the glory of the brand or the company reputation. They wanted to be seen this way. Therefore, so I just don't think I spent enough time really
Mm.
talking with people. Yes, we all had research. We all did research, and research has mature. I'm not going to tell you because you guys have done amazing work and amazing research, but I think sometimes we didn't really know what's beneath the research. And
100%. No, 100,
Yeah.
I was just saying
Yeah.
100%. And because, like you said, yeah, we'd go on there and say, here's what the audience want. How do you know? Oh, all this research data. Have you sat in a Walmart for 5 days or a week? Did 30 of you go into a Walmart and watch people and talk to them as they walked up to buy something? We rarely got so as granulated as that because there wasn't time. And I would just as an adjunct to that, the other thing that you mentioned about, you're like, look, it was a slow process. We had to do this. We had to do this. Clients are like, hey, where is this? You guys have been at this 2 months now, and we're not seeing anything. What's going on? It's just
Right.
they don't wait. And I think things take time to build.
even to the point about you used Walmart, I'll use Costco.
All
I was
right.
not I was not a Costco shopper. My husband was more so than I was, but I was not one. And it's easy to generalize when you're not something about who are the Costco shoppers. And I think a lot of times I'll just say, I got it wrong. I can't talk for you, but I got it wrong. I generalized and I didn't understand until I became a Costco shopper. Now, I can't be everything and I can't go everywhere,
Right.
but I think working in a smaller town, you get to really see how the differences in how we live. And then
Mm,
I become more sensitive in terms of how I speak about things. Just in terms of, I'll give you an example during the pandemic, the early days of the pandemic. I was up here in Connecticut the whole time. My husband was here a little bit, but he had to go back to the city and serve patients. And we'd start Zoom calls, and I'd say, "Yeah, oh, well, I'm going to be up at the country." I would use terms. I'm going to be at my house in the country. And I would say this to, people in my company, that I work with who are struggling in their one bedroom or one and a half bedroom apartment with a roommate. And it's like almost the tone deafness that we had and I displayed was incredible. And then the word the country. I mean, it's laughable now. So what is the country?
yeah.
Is
Brooklyn.
it I'm in Northwest Connecticut. Is it the Hudson Valley? Is it, Bucks County, Pennsylvania? Is it out east? Whatever out east means. And I think what it does is it makes you realize that we all live different lives and we can't be easily clumped together. And so I would just say that is, um, ultimately what I think what politics does, which I know brand work is about changing minds, changing behaviors, but doing something not on the brand terms, but equal with the people you're trying to reach. And that I struggled with throughout my career. That I don't think we were talking about the people as much as Axe is going to make your lives better.
Correct.
It's interesting you talk about it that way, and I want to go back to something you said earlier about, whether or not we really put the consumer first and what clients really wanted. And this is, I think, another, at least for me, a compelling intersection of how we talk about the creative work that we did and how kind of politics is operating right now. I would suggest that when the client had a lot of trust in their brand and if they believed their brand was well defined, then they were okay. They trusted us to put the consumer at the center. Whereas if they thought that the brand was on shaky ground, that it was more amorphous than concrete, that it was very abstract, that's when they started to kind of yell to put the brand first, and where is the brand in this, and how does the brand live. And I'm I feel like that's exactly the problem that the Democratic Party has right now in this country. And I think, listen, we could go down this rabbit hole. I'd rather not, but I felt like one of the biggest issues with the Harris campaign was that they campaigned on Trump is awful. We're not Trump. Trump is going to kill us all. Vote for us. And I think that there's not a lot of trust or definition in the Democratic platform so that, an undecided voter, whoever the fuck those people are, can walk down the street and say, what does the Democratic Party stand for? What's on this ticket? What's the platform? They would have a hard time articulating that other than to seep into the negativity that they feel towards the president and the Republican Party.
Let's so I give her credit. She had 107 days to
Oh, sh-
and so there was only so much that she did. I think it was brilliant how so many groups came out for her. It was the white women, black women, the chefs for Harris. But I think what you're saying is the campaign said many things versus the MAGA campaign said a few things.
yeah.
And that's also the simplicity of the story, your campaign messages, which I think is also something I was going to talk about. I think it just came up with you were some of the things you and I had talked about is I spent so much time as all three of us did. We like to create good, compelling stories that people listen to and react to. But I saw so many message houses which were disguised as a story, and people don't respond to messages. They respond to things in their lives. And so it's like, oh my God, this is not a story. It is really your pillars and the facts of your pillars. And I think if you liken what maybe the problem with the Harris campaign, it was a big message house and nothing rose to the top
Yeah,
again,
I think that's
except
fair.
against him.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this, because again, I've never been, aside from voting, I've never really been involved in politics in any meaningful way. And today you can argue that any action or word is political by nature. I've never run for office. I've never done any fundraising or anything like that. My perception of local politics basically comes from videos on Reddit with people screaming at each other at town council meetings. Like, how does it operate day to day for you when you've got to deal with what I'm assuming is a lot of Republican counterparts? Is it as divisive as maybe media paints it to be, or are you guys really working together? What's your take on that?
I mean, I can only speak for my situation as much as when I was in the agency world, I would speak for everyone's situation because we're an expert, right? No, but I think we're a small town, and I think it's important to listen first and listen more. And most of the things that impact us in a small town are not that great. We have to protect, and that's why we work with our state government as well. But it is about listening, and it's about really, basically listening to people who have more experience, but also bringing fresh perspectives. And there's that balance of how you trust people. But yeah, there is a lot of fighting because let's face it, I am afraid these days. I haven't been afraid of living who I am since I came out. And now in small towns, not here necessarily in my town here, but I'm more afraid than I ever have been in the last, 2 decades because there is a lot of polarization of a lot of different people. So uh, it is a lot of screaming, but if we're going to master this, I'm not saying like I'm going to invite someone over who thinks that I should be erased or eliminated. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to change their minds. But there are people in the middle of, the old style Republicans who you can have a credible conversation with. But it's also making sure I'm not being the one to only talk to them. And you find again, it sounds so trite, I'm going to say this, but you try to find the common ground because there are many things that you agree on. And so, what I'm proud of is there are a lot of people who are either Republicans or unaffiliated voters who voted for me or voted for our ideas. That's because we found the common ground. And that's where I think the brands work, and I think brand marketing and creative have evolved so much, but it's almost like looking about putting the people first. And I think your point is really well taken, Mark, to me at least. It is being knowing who you are and what you believe in as a brand, and then meeting the audience. So
Sure.
So
Yeah.
aren't the Republicans putting the people first too in your local community? I mean, wouldn't that be I mean, wouldn't that be expected?
So it's interesting because you saw me almost react before you finished. So I wasn't
Mhm.
listening totally. I wanted to jump down and
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
but then you said it in your local community because
yeah.
I would say from a national perspective, probably not. I get along well. Our first selectman is a Republican. I know where he stands on national stuff, but I know how hard he works and how much he cares about the citizens. Our other selectman is a human being that I want to be one day when I grow up. I mean, he's just this amazing, artist and business person, and he feels the same way. He just wants to do good by the town. I think what happens in these small towns is you would have what I call the old guard and the newer people. And that's where clashes are. And sometimes it's around party lines, but it goes back to just like really spending time with each other and finding out that there's a lot of things that we all agree on.
Well,
Um,
let me ask you very quick. What was the story? You said, all the IRS messages, and you got to have a story. What was the story you told? What was your story what was your story for the woman who couldn't get elected and did? What was your story as nobody knew and suddenly everybody's like, yeah, I'm gonna go with that guy. What?
we played it positive. We were not against anything. What we were for having more people involved in the governing of our town. We felt getting more voices together is about what strengthens us. And there is this saying in our town, but a lot of small towns is like you're not really a resident until your family's been here for multiple generations. And that's not just Warren, it's a lot of towns feel that way. And it's changing. And so what we tried to do is really talk about the commonality of all of us is we've all chosen to call Warren our home. So I've been here 17 years. Some people have been here for their whole lives,
Hmm.
but we all made the decision to call this our home. And, again, we have our little campaign slogans. This was done, we did it in 2 hours. We didn't focus group it. We just said, we are all in for Warren. And it had, really dimension to it. All meant all of us. People who've been here for 2 generations, 3 generations, or someone who just came here last year. That's all. All in. All in means we are doing the work. All of us are invested something in this town. For Warren, it's bigger than any of us. It's for the town we call home. And we won with a positive message.
That's great.
It's
Thank you.
when I first kind of thought about inviting you on, I knew there were going to be some interesting kind of similarities and comparisons between the work that you've spent most of your career doing and the work that you're now doing in public service. Um, but it strikes me even like you're saying, like, we've got to get our story straight. We've got to have a positive message. We've got to put the outcomes, and the people at the center. But, at the end of the day, it seems like, and this may be just stating the obvious here, but that what you're doing is just a continuation of what you've done your entire career, and that is selling ideas to people who need to buy them in order to move the brand, in this case, the party forward. It seems a lot more natural than maybe I was thinking of. Is that your read on it, or is it more complicated than that?
I never hadn't thought about this. I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm just writing a note or two down. I think you nailed it. You nailed it because this is not rocket science. I mean, this is the fundamental, which I know that you and I would say you too, Jeremy, but I don't know you
Yeah,
beyond
yeah.
the call. I know Mark. It is we're not trying to sell things. Like we're not trying like, for instance, I look at LinkedIn and I'd love to do a whole discussion with you about LinkedIn and oh my God, it's getting to the point where the word honored. Yes, I know you're honored to be on this panel. Great. Thank you very much. You're changing the life. But I think it is about helping, especially, and I'm going to go back to the nonprofit world here, is there are so many worthwhile organizations out there who need support, who are doing great work, but need support, meaning financial, they need volunteers, what have you. And a lot of it is not just the idea, but it's also the story. How do you tell the story about the importance of your work? Because there are well-funded organizations who have a lot of rich donors and they support them. And there's like a club, so to speak, because you want to be part of a crowd, but also you like the work. But I think what I'm trying to do with a number of organizations, going to a board meeting about an hour or two from here, up about 40 minutes from here, it's but how do we better tell our story so that more people can see the importance of our work? And that's the first element, but then there's the action inducement. You need to see it, you need to consider it, and then we want you to join us, either be a volunteer or support us with money that we need. So it is pretty simple. And I think if more of our, former colleagues joined in this world, imagine the good we can do. And especially if you're not doing it, we're not doing it for credit. If we're not doing it to get our names out there, look what this person is doing now. They started this organization. You know, good. And people should get credit for hard work. But if we're doing it for the right reasons,
Yeah.
it's simple.
The other thing, the other trap we would fall into, I'm not sure if it's as much anymore, or maybe it's more, I don't know. But this was the common phrase. This is really important. We need a big idea. We need a big idea. All the agencies are involved. We need a big idea. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be meaningful. It just has to resonate. It can be quite small, and still have this more impact than that big idea. And that's where what you're saying is, look, we just did this, very simple things, and you accomplish those. Go ahead. I see you're eager to respond, but you're listening like you said you did. Go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm listening now. I'm listening to you. It's this reminds me. I mean, yes, we've all used the term big idea, and
Yeah.
sometimes I remember one time a humbling exercise was we were talking to this guy that we were thinking about bringing into the company, what have you, and he was working at I think Fresh Direct at the time, and he said to my boss and I, he said, you know something, what you're saying is what every agency is saying. They want to be the ones who bring the big ideas to clients, and every agency is saying that. So a lot of it was competing with that. But it reminds me of something we were doing for Heineken USA a couple of years ago. And the clients were the head of communications, the head of marketing, and the global brand director. And they said, we want a bold idea.
Oh,
So,
there. I haven't heard that word today.
oh, they wanted a bold idea. Yeah. And what we realized, and we were doing some ideas. The ad agency was doing ideas, and sometimes we were working together. But what we realized, none of us were hitting it out of the park because they had different definitions of what bold meant.
Mm,
The same thing with big. A big idea to someone in, let's say, public affairs could be a lot smaller than it could be to someone in, consumer marketing.
true.
So.
Yeah. Before we turn away from politics, and talk a little about some industry stuff, and Jeremy, there's another little interesting piece that I'll bring up here in a second. How do you have at this point in your career? Do you have greater aspirations? Would you like to do bigger things in the realm of politics and public service, or are you like kind of like, nope, this is my lane. This is what I'm doing.
Good question. Um, I think I'm content. I think I'm really content, which is nice to be content. I think I have goals, which I know I can't do alone. But I could help initiate others to do things. I'll give you a couple of examples. You want a couple of examples or
Please, please.
one? Um, you both talk about curiosity. We all talk about curiosity. Curiosity is not valued, even though agencies say it is. I
Mm.
remember talking with somebody at my old company, and I was always on the curiosity kick. And she said to me, but the problem is it's not valued because I have to account for every hour of my time or every 15 minutes, and there's no room for creativity. I'm
Mm,
sorry, curiosity.
mm,
That said, where there's even less room and tolerance for is intergenerational curiosity. And how do you get people with more years of work working together with someone who has fewer years of work? And that's where, because if you're going to be curious with the like-minded people, you're going to get some of the same things. But if you really can get people working without hierarchy, and imagine someone my age working with someone 23 years old, and because the way what they grew up under versus what I did, we're going to see things differently. So if I can help bring about more intercuriosity work, that's a big thing that I would like to do. And intergenerational, I'm sorry, curiosity. That's one thing. And two, and I'd love to hear your reaction to this, given what you both have been so successful at, is creativity is such a big word, and creative is such a big word, but it really is so narrow. who gets to be creative. And I think from our industry, we became like ad agencies. We became rigid and hierarchical.
Mm,
And I think that everyone has the ability to think creatively.
sure.
Now, I am not going to be an art director. I don't have that talent, but I can think creatively. Most people can. And how do we liberate that word and apply that instead of like the unique roles you have, the tension. So these are things that I just think we have to change
Yeah.
the way we work and approach creative and curiosity. So those are
I
two big
think I
things.
think Mark, what we just learned is that Howard is bi-curious, I think, and that's very interesting that he would admit to that on a public forum like this. So very good,
See,
Howard.
you have an exclusive, the Howard Pulchin exclusive.
I think Howard, to your point about the kind of who gets to be creative, I have a take on this that I haven't really talked a lot about before, and I think it has to do more with agency structure than agency intent. And here's what I mean. Um, you have a situation at most big agencies. It was true at Conan Wolf. It was certainly true at Ketchum. And I've seen it play out, from the sidelines at other agencies where you may have four EVPs who are running practices, who are running massive pieces of business, and all of whom have aspirations to either run an office or run an agency and kind of take that next step. And the problem is there aren't as many of those jobs as the pyramid, kind of gets narrow at the top. So people started to look for things that they could specialize in. Okay. No, you're not going to run you're not going to run the office, but you're going to be the head of strategy. Or, no, you're not going to run the agency, but you are going to be our, chief
Great.
client officer, whatever the fuck that means. So I think that people kind of saw the way that things were happening at the top and tried to feed in to those silos and tried to get in on that kind of specialization thing, especially at least when I was a mid-level executive at an agency, and you'd have always, I'm sure you've both heard this, kind of junior people going like, I really love this job, I just don't like working with the media. And try, look for other fucking things to do other than what we needed them to do most. So I think it's and by the way, I'm not suggesting that I have an answer to all this, but I think it's a lack of kind of foresight in terms of how that structure would play out, knowing that you're eventually going to lose people who are not elevated to the point where they want to be elevated, and kind of happen because of that lack of foresight, because of that lack of imagination for what you could do in a structure like that.
So
That's
imagine
my
if,
2 cents.
but no, your 2 cents are, I think it's really intriguing, is like, imagine if the three of us started a business. But what we
Mhm.
said, we took all the lessons that we learned, experienced, were subjected to, and changed it. So we got a culture that was, yeah, I mean, everyone wants to get ahead. But what they want is they want the title, but they want the money, right? They want the recognition.
Right.
And flatter organizations, that's why we're seeing a lot of the smaller agencies doing well because they're providing. I mean, I was too expensive to work on business the last couple of years. I mean, I was being, my billing rate was ridiculous. I was never worth it. Okay. But
Right.
if we think about how we define success in an agency world, that's where we have now. This is Pollyanna-ish of me thinking, oh, we can change that. But we have to change what these roles are and what success means. And I think I mean, I know my peer sets wanted sometimes the wrong thing. It was less about doing a good job. It was about going to the leadership meeting. It was about, getting assigned to the choice pieces of business, which is fulfilling. I just think that we cheerleaded around and we sought the probably the wrong things. And maybe that's where I've evolved finally. And I was not always a good behaving person per se, but I've evolved to say what's most important to me as opposed to the trappings because she had that or he had that. I wanted it too.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I I think
philosophical.
I think it's also, and some of the research bears this out. I think it's 60% of the people say the biggest obstacle in their life is themselves. And also, and I've said this over and over during my trainings. I would do trainings around the world, literally around the world, and I know I'm sure both of you did some of the same. And people would come up to me, pull me off to the side. I'd do creative trainings. They're like, "Hey, look, I'm not really creative, so how do I blah blah blah?" And I said, no one ever pulled me aside and said, "Hey, look, I'm not really intelligent. So if you could just help me," right? And somehow this creative seemed God-given. And they start to buy into the notion of let others define them. Like you were just saying, Marc, no, no, you're not that. You're this. You're not that. You're this. And you let them do that. You let them take your soul out and dictate. And we lose, not to get all LA metaphysical on you, but we lose ourselves in everybody celebrates this culture, but we lose ourselves in that culture a lot of times because they're dictating what that is for you. And you can't, just like my mentor who said, I'm not going to tell you how to present. He wasn't trying to define who I was. He was just saying, just a note. And I think we get lost and let others dictate who we are or who we aren't. And that can hurt your career. That can hurt your contentedness or happiness as well.
Well, but I think an adjunct to this, I think if I'm listening, and I think I'm really aligned with what you're saying, is it's not it's others telling us what we should be doing, but
Yes.
judging ourselves
Yes.
against others, which may not be right for me, but because
Yes.
they have it, I want it too.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I
So
remember, not to make this about me, although I'm much more elevated and successful than you two. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. But I remember going up and quitting my job because I said I want to do creativity, and you guys aren't allowing me to do that. And they're like, "Well, this is public relations. There is no chief creative officer. We don't have that role. That doesn't exist." I'm like, "So?" And so I said, if you don't give me that, then I'm leaving. I'm going to go find it somewhere. If I have to go to the ad site, I'll find it. And now, and officially, I was turned into they wouldn't make me the chief creative officer. I was the chief creative catalyst because there were no creative officers, chief creative officers in PR. And I'm like, fine, whatever. Just give me the fucking creative challenge. I don't care what my title is. But that was defined, and I think that plays into politics too. This is the way it is. This is the way it always is. We're not going to be democratic in our little town in Connecticut, and that's the way life is. And you guys stepped up and said, well, why? Why not? Why can't it be? And I think that's the biggest thing we lose in the cultures. We want to be in a it's natural to want to be accepted instead of standing out in the cold and going, I'm not a part of that. I'm something different.
well, I have this is like more of a postscript for you both, but it's like my kind of gift to you. You were talking about your trainings, and I was thinking about sometimes just teaching people to be curious and doing workshops, and they were probably one of the most meaningful things I've ever done. But what I wrote down based on something you said, Jeremy, was teaching people to look differently, which seems really strange to have to teach people to look differently.
Yeah.
But one anecdote in one of the sessions we did was it was right outside the Edelman office in the down in Hudson Square where whatever the exercise was, and they said they came back. I just gave them basic instructions what to do, very vague. What do you mean? Just what I said. And they told an example of, every day we walked by a building on the side and we always wondered what they were, but we never knew. So when you told us to be curious, we went in and we talked to them. We found out and we thought about partnerships. And it's because they're too
It's
busy
awesome.
looking. So
Yeah.
the curiosity, it seems weird to say it should be taught, but it
Yes.
needs to be again,
Yeah.
especially with AI.
Well,
So.
especially with the polarized world, we're shut, to your point, we're shutting down the other side's messaging. We're shutting it down and we're labeling and we're assigning their message before they even get up to us. And the curiosity is lost. And I think that's what you're finding on that local level. You're finding that let me hear what they have to say. Um, so I think that's valid.
Before we wrap up here, I know we're running long. Thanks for hanging in with us, Howard. Uh, I do want to bring up one thing that we all share, and I haven't spoken to you about either of this, but I just want to read a very quick excerpt from an email that Howard that you sent me earlier, and it's in your bio that you shared, and the excerpt is: he attended the Cannes Festival only once and has never felt the urge to return.
Where's that,
Uh,
Mark? What is that in? That's in.
that's a Howard has shared that as part of his kind of intro slash like microbio.
That is awesome.
And Howard, as maybe you could tell, Jeremy and I have a lot of contempt, not only for Cannes specifically, but for awards in general. We kind of hate the fact that they exist. We understand why they do. We get, agency marketing, and with some publications out there, it's now become, little league. Everybody gets an award. But can you talk a little bit about your experience at Cannes? What you liked, what you didn't, why you never felt the urge to return? Because you're clearly one of us.
Well, I was lucky in my only time to go, I was on a jury. And I thought being on a jury where you really spent time looking at the work and really debating it and listening to other people on the jury, hearing things and their perspectives and changing minds, lobbying each other. It was really energizing to see what we all came up with is what's the best, what are things that are good. I didn't have time to do a lot of the trappings. Yes, I did have some glasses of, rosé, but the world that I didn't experience, but I always saw before I went, I saw it on, in LinkedIn and Facebook, and I see it now, and I'm fearing a lot to see this in the next, what is it, in 2 weeks' time now, I think it is, or next
Yeah.
week, this
Yeah.
is the tone deafness of people who are there talking about how excited they are, honored, all the stuff.
Proud,
What's that? Proud,
proud.
proud,
Beyond proud, not just
beyond
proud, my
proud.
friend.
Drinking, all this is like we act like this is the greatest place in the world for this week, and we're forgetting that people at home are paying nearly $5 a gallon of gas. Food prices are up. It is the tone, it is that the world is suffering or the world's in conflict. We're having a war. We're having people are being erased. They're being pulled off the streets. Again, I'll get off my soapbox for a second. But they're having rosé in Cannes. That to me doesn't matter. Are you changing the world? Are you doing anything of meaning? Yes, some of the work is stellar, but isn't it time to say, let's get back to being humans and not just cheerleaders?
Yeah. I think they would argue that over those rosés, they're also doing business, which is valid. I mean, they're making connections and things like that. But I do see some postings that are like, not only that, dude, but what, okay, now I'm on my soapbox. And Mark,
Yeah,
you and I
please.
talked about this, but I don't like when it wasn't, you didn't get there by yourself. You stood on shoulders. You're standing on the employees you've hired to get there, to be there. And you're over there posting all these images while those slogs and the cogs in the machine are grinding away back home. But you're never going to get to do this. I just think it's a little, I don't know. I see its value. I understand its point, but Mark and I go on forever about that. Sorry,
We,
that was my thing.
we,
Hey,
we
can I
should have
tell? Go ahead.
That's it. We should have an award for your listeners. Who who can share the most horrific posts they've seen during Cannes, and we will award them. We'll
Dude,
award them an hour free consulting or whatever it is.
yeah,
Love
yeah,
that.
the TDA, the Tone Deaf Awards.
Love
Uh,
it.
I
Nice.
must share with you this one last thing because we talked about curiosity, and I want to just about always listening, Howard, and you kept saying I'm listening, and I kept thinking of this little thing in my head. So this director calls a producer, and he says to the producer, "Dude, the fuck were you thinking? Sending me that chick over here to audition for this part? She can't even read a sentence, let alone emote something while she's reading it. The only way she's going to get any other role is if she sleeps with somebody. If that's still going on today, she doesn't have a prayer. And the producer pauses and said, "Hey, that's my daughter." And he said, "Let me finish."
Oh man, love it.
There you go.
All
So,
right.
go ahead, Marc.
So, to wrap us up, Howard, I think you know we have 3 questions that we ask every guest before we sign off. Jeremy, do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
Sure, I'll go. I'll lead. Might
Sure.
I ask you, Howard, why don't you we want to know what is your oldest grudge?
Okay. By the way, I'm just going to preface this by saying when I was listening to some of your previous, when I especially Nancy's responses 2 guests ago, I was like, oh God, I'm getting intimidated. I don't want to make, I have to make sure I'm not saying here, or how do I make mine good too? Because theirs were really good. Okay. The Grudge. Can I change it to not the oldest? Because there's probably a lot of things, but probably a one that has stayed with me for a long time.
Okay,
Sure,
typical
sure.
creative dude changing the brief, but all right, go ahead.
Exactly. So the grudge that I just can't seem to get over is, especially in my last job, how many times I heard we have to be, when it related to advocating for LGBTQ rights.
Mm-mm.
Um, oh, we have to be nonpartisan. Oh, we can't be political. Oh, it's tricky. There's nothing tricky if you believe in America and liberty and justice for all. Why is that political? Why do you have to play it safe if we're talking about equality? So I just resent the fact that so many, not just the people I'm referring to, but so many have said this. We got to be careful. Why do you have to be careful when it's to someone, your employees' rights? So that's my biggest grudge.
That's okay. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
And by the way, that goes back to your all in for Warren, liberty and justice for all, in for Warren. I like it. Go ahead.
Nice. So I know this is probably bad juju to ask a politician this, but Howard, what was the last lie you told?
Yeah.
I know. I had to think about this. Okay, we tell lies all the time. Let's face it. We tell lies. And this is probably more my emotional side, which I don't think I've shown as I can get really emotional. I think I lie every day. When people say, "How are you feeling? How are you doing?" Or the worst question in the world, because no one ever really cares for an answer, is, "How are you?" Whatever. No one waits. But I kind of lie because I kind of try to be optimistic when I'm talking to people I care about. And I say, I'm managing well, I'm doing okay, but I don't reveal sometimes I feel like I'm a mess. I think it's hard not to be a mess. So I lie constantly because I also feel that, if I just admit it all, I may just go into a spiral. Now, no concern, I'm fine. But it's I lie, like that's what I lie about these days.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because there is nothing more startling than to hear someone tell you the truth about something. Because it's so unexpected these days because the default has been, "I'm good. Yeah, how you doing? I'm good. I'm good." You don't want to hear like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, nobody wants to hear like, "Oh, well, here's my litany of issues and problems that are preventing me from being a, formally, completely self-actualized individual. My wife is this, my home life is this, my daughter is this, no, all I want to hear is I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm good."
It's also like when you see all the people, and people do care enough when someone is close to someone dies. And I think this is an old Jewish expression. I don't know, Mark, I want to ask you maybe, is when you see, what is it? May their memory be a blessing.
Yes. Yes.
What the fuck does that mean? Someone just lost. Don't put trite things when someone close to them has died. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
Well, don't use that again about. Yeah, go ahead, Marc.
By the way, I am not defending that at all. What it really means, and this is something that, again, is trite, but would be great if it could be true. And that is that when you think about someone who's passed, you want that memory to make you happy, not sad. Now, I agree. To say that to someone who just lost somebody, it's like, dude, come on, what are you doing? There's not going to be anything but sadness for the foreseeable future. So I hear what you're saying.
It's being a little bit more original and just being
Yes.
yourself in their shoes.
Well, Just for our, talking about memory being a blessing, and for all our Republican listeners out there, if Biden had a memory, that would be a blessing. Let's just say that out there, and just to be honest with that. So look at
All right, Jeremy, last question.
yes. Okay, my friend, uh, Howard,
Mhm.
what is the best or worst advice you've ever received?
Okay, I have like tons of notes because I want to be prepared, but I'm gonna go out on a high note here, I think, a
Yeah.
positive one. So when I was restructured, I was taking time off, and I wasn't looking to work with a coach, but I just happened to see this guy, former Google guy, and I loved the colors of his website. I was trite. I loved how, but it turned out he lived 45 minutes north of me in Massachusetts. Wonderful guy, Michael Bolognino. And he gave me a couple wisdom kernels that he made me really think hard, not answer right away. Part of it is, what do you want to do? He also asked me, like, what do you really need, financially to have the life you want to live? Which is a really good question, instead of just saying more, more, more. But he said to me, think about, how do you want to work? And that was a really good question, because when you answer that truthfully, then you have fewer options, which is a good thing sometimes. You're
Yes.
not chasing things that, yeah, it may be a good title or more role, but it's not how I want to work. And so,
That's great.
and
That's a good
so
one.
it's a good one. I love that piece of advice. So,
Amazing.
Well,
Amazing.
just for me, since I have not met Howard until today, dude, I wish we had worked together in the past. I can tell you and I would have been, we would be true partners in creative prime, creative partners in crime. And I see you as a true conspirator. So thank you. And listen, dude, congratulations on your victory, and for trying to make the place better wherever you are. Thank you, man.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hey, Howard, thank you again for coming on. Great conversation. And yeah, Jeremy, I think we've covered it all. We've solved for it all.
That's it.
Well, thank
Well,
you. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. Even just for the hour plus of this, I got away from the world, and just thought about, I'm thinking about now just good things, and I guess it would be game five, which
yeah,
Game
will be,
five.
which will be in the past, of course, when this airs,
yeah,
but
yeah. You're right, bro.
which
Yeah.
is
Go
last
Knicks.
last
Big
night.
one.
So,
All right, kids. I'm
Yeah.
Jeremy Baka.
I'm Marc Levy for Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish. We will see you next week. Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks, Howard.
thank you.